Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're stepping away from the usual maps, definitely leaving the beaten path far behind us.
Yeah, the material we're digging into for this deep dive is, well, it's different. Definitely different.
It really is. It comes with this sort of shiver, doesn't it? A sense of something, I don't know, ancient and powerful.
Potent, yeah.
Yeah.
And right from the start, it tells you flat out, this isn't safe.
Yeah.
It's not normal.
Not nice is how it puts it. It calls the whole thing a forbidden dive.
That phrase alone, forbidden dive, it just grabs you, doesn't it? It immediately signals we're going somewhere. Well, somewhere we're maybe not supposed to go.
Exactly. Territory that was meant to stay hidden.
And the source material isn't just, presenting dry facts. It feels like it's unveiling something that was deliberately, actively concealed.
Which sets this tone, right? Huge potential, maybe, but also serious risk.
Immense potential, serious risk. That's the feeling.
Absolutely. Forbidden dive. It definitely sparks that primal curiosity. So the mission today for this deep dive is to follow the specific path laid out in this really fascinating material.
Step by step.
Yeah. It presents this almost unbelievable idea. A forgotten code or a hidden command, something apparently buried deep inside every single one of us.
And it's really insistent, isn't it? That this isn't just philosophy, it's not a metaphor for, self-help or something.
Not at all. It describes a very practical process. Okay, maybe highly unconventional, definitely demanding, but a process nonetheless.
Yeah, it's less about thinking about an idea and more about doing something. Something the source claims, quite directly, you're not supposed to be doing.
Right. It's framed as an action, a sequence you can actually follow. And it really doesn't shy away from warning you up front.
No, it's pretty blunt.
Engaging with this, it says, could trigger profound changes, maybe unsettling changes, even potentially reality-altering ones.
It basically tells you you're stepping onto a path that was hidden, deliberately, for a reason.
It's like someone hands you the instructions to unlock this ancient lock inside you that you never even knew was there.
But there's a massive warning sign already hanging on it.
Exactly. So we're here to basically walk you through what the source material says those instructions are and what those warnings mean.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's jump right in. The absolute core idea, the foundation for this whole deep dive, is this really radical concept of a code buried inside us. How does the source actually describe it? What is this code, fundamentally?
Well, the language it uses is pretty striking. It claims this forgotten code. It's not like a spell you chant or just a nice metaphor for your inner potential.
Okay.
It's described as something real, something raw, something that's constantly vibrating within you.
Vibrating.
Yeah. And crucially, it insists this code is totally unique to each individual person.
A real, raw, vibrating code? That sounds intensely physical, almost biological, doesn't it? Not just spiritual or mental.
It does. It leans heavily on that physical inherent sense.
Yeah.
And when it talks about where this code comes from,
yeah, where does it supposedly come from?
it points to incredibly ancient origins. The material claims this knowledge wasn't just, lost over the centuries. It was actively hidden.
Hidden, like deliberately put away.
Yes. Allegedly concealed, maybe in the architecture of old temples, whispered in, like the final moments by people described as the last guardians of truth.
Wow. Last guardians of truth.
Guardians who apparently chose to take this knowledge to their graves rather than let it spread widely.
Okay, whispered secrets, guarded knowledge. So definitely not something you'd find in a textbook or learn at university.
Not a chance.
So how did it get passed down then, if not through normal ways? The source must say something.
It does. It explicitly says it wasn't passed down through books or any kind of formal teaching. It claims it was transmitted purely through experience.
Experience?
Experience, through blood, through dream.
Blood and dream. Okay, that really adds this layer of ancestral depth, mystery.
Absolutely. It suggests it's woven into our lineage somehow, our consciousness, existing outside of, normal historical records. Yeah. Accessed maybe through altered states.
So it implies it's inherited maybe or accessed in non-ordinary ways. And what's the big claim? What happens if you actually manage to interact with this code?
This is where it gets, really significant.
Yeah.
The source states that if you manage to find and speak your specific word, the key to your personal code, which we'll get into how to find.
Right.
If you speak it correctly, and says you don't just feel different inside, the material insists you become different.
Become different. That's a strong claim, not just a shift in mood or perspective, but a fundamental change in your actual being.
That's the very strong implication, yes.
Yeah.
And it even describes a tangible almost physical effect that goes with it.
Physical? Like what?
It says that when you speak the word correctly, the actual molecules in your body start behaving differently, as if they remember something incredibly ancient.
Your molecules remember.
That's the claim. Something it describes poetically, but also maybe a bit ominously as terrifyingly beautiful.
Molecules remembering something terrifyingly beautiful. That's an extraordinary statement. It really pushes this beyond the abstract, doesn't it? Right down to the physical level.
It suggests a memory that's not just in your brain, but maybe in your cells, your very structure, triggered by this one specific sound.
And that phrase, terrifyingly beautiful, it captures that duality, right? The beauty of unlocking something amazing, maybe, but also the terror of disruption, the unknown.
Exactly. It perfectly encapsulates that feeling the source gives off about this code.
Right.
Potential and peril wrapped together.
Okay, so this code exists. It's ancient. It might be in our very molecules, and speaking our unique word for it can transform us. But you mentioned it's unique. The source was clear. This word isn't universal.
Absolutely critical point. The source is extremely explicit. The word is not the same for everyone. It claims every single soul has its own unique word.
Its own trigger.
Its own trigger, its own specific awakening sequence, as it puts it.
So finding your word isn't about learning some ancient mantra anyone can use. It's a personal quest.
Exactly. It's a journey into your own unique internal landscape. You can't just look it up or have someone give it to you. You have to uncover your key.
Which brings us neatly to the next big part of the source material. The search, the actual steps it lays out for trying to find this personal trigger word, this inner code.
Right, and the source immediately sets the scene here by framing this whole search phase as stepping into experimental territory.
Experimental territory, okay.
And it uses this really striking term for it. It calls it a form of raw hacking.
Raw hacking, that sounds forceful, disruptive even. What exactly are you supposedly hacking?
It specifies. You're engaging in a raw hacking of your voice, your senses, and get this, your freaking soul. That's the quote.
Hacking your soul. Okay.
Well, it positions the search as this really direct, unfiltered interaction with your deepest selves, completely bypassing normal ways of, introspection or meditation.
Raw hacking your voice, senses, soul. The language is intense. It suggests a direct, maybe even uncomfortable confrontation with whatever's inside. So how does the source say you actually start this raw hacking? What's the first phase?
The material calls the first phase sound testing, and it gives quite specific instructions about the environment you need.
Okay, what kind of environment?
You're told to find a place where silence really echoes, a room that feels like it's listening, and very importantly, complete darkness.
Silence, darkness, a listening room. Sounds like sensory deprivation almost, or at least drastically reducing outside input. Why is that specific setting needed?
The source explains it's about removing all the external noise, all the usual light and sound that constantly bombards us. You need to do that to tune into the really subtle internal signals.
Turn your attention completely inward. Heighten your sensitivity to yourself. Makes sense.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're in this dark, silent listening space. What do you actually do?
The practice is described very precisely. You begin whispering. And this is stress, you are not whispering words. Not yet.
No words. What then?
You use raw, primal phones and vowels. The source gives examples like ooh, sh, zai, though. Just basic sounds.
Pure sounds. The building blocks of language, but stripped of meaning. Like the fundamental vibrations our voices can make.
Precisely. The absolute basics.
And what are you supposed to be doing while you make these sounds?
The instruction is, close your eyes, say these sounds out loud, slowly, one after another. And as you do it, you have to actively feel your body.
Feel your body.
Feel your bones vibrating. Feel your chest resonating. The whole focus is on the physical sensation, the internal resonance that each of these raw sounds might cause inside you.
So you're listening with your body, really, as much as with your ears. What's the specific signal you're listening and feeling for in the dark and quiet? How do you know if a sound is hitting the mark?
The source says you're looking for the moment when one of those sounds punches back.
Punches back.
Yeah, or when it feels like it hits some kind of invisible wall inside you. The sense of physical resistance or impact is presented as the key signal you're looking for.
Wow, that's a really physical description.
It is. And it also offers what it calls a pro tip. Your word always tingles before it talks.
It tingles before it talks. Okay, so a physical punch hitting a wall or a distinct tingling sensation. What does the source suggest this represents? What is that feeling?
It's interpreted as the word itself, or rather, the code connected to it, actually responding to that specific sound frequency you just made.
So it's resonance.
Exactly. It's the physical sign of resonance. That punch or wall or tingle, that's the code saying, okay, you're close. It's vibrating, reacting, because the sound you made is near its own frequency. It's like the first click of the internal lock when the right key starts to turn.
Incredible. Okay, so you found that sound, that primal foam that gives you the punch or the tingle. That's phase 1, sound testing. What's the next phase in this raw hacking?
Phase 2 is called fuse and twist.
Fuse and twist.
The source describes this as the mutation phase. You take that single buzzing sound, the one that gave you that clear signal.
The one that punched back or tingled.
Right. And you start to mutate it, to build on it, to shape it.
Mutate it. How does it say you do that?
You start adding letters to that core sound. You stretch the sound out, you warp it. You're basically playing with combinations, but you're guided by that initial resonant feeling you found.
So you're experimenting.
Exactly. The source gives some hypothetical examples, like maybe that ah sound that resonated starts to morph into something like Azareth, or maybe the sh sound that tingled starts twisting into Sharakai.
Ah, I see. So you take that initial core vibration and you intuitively or maybe experimentally add more complexity to it, trying to find a full word or sound sequence that keeps or even intensifies that resonant feeling.
That's precisely it. And the source is really firm on how you do this.
Yeah.
You must do it out loud.
Out loud, okay.
And it specifically says, don't be shy. It claims you're not just talking to yourself when you do this. You are, and I quote, talking to something older than language.
Talking to something older than language. Wow. That reinforces the ancient origins again, doesn't it? Like you're trying direct vocal contact with this fundamental, maybe pre-verbal part of yourself or reality that the code is tied to.
That's the strong implication.
So how do you know when you've actually done it? When you've succeeded in this fuse and twist phase, how do you know you've found your actual word?
The source gives some pretty dramatic, almost visceral cues for validation.
Okay.
It says, you know you've hit the right combination, your unique word, when it literally stops your breath.
Stops your breath.
Yes. And when the very air around you feels like it changes, when, and this is another vivid quote, reality leaned in to listen.
Stops your breath.
Yeah.
It changes. Reality leaned in to listen. Those are incredibly potent, almost supernatural descriptions. What does that imply about the word itself, its power?
It really suggests that the word, once you get it right, carries this immense vibrational force or presence, something that impacts not just you internally, but the actual environment around you.
So it's more than just the sound.
Much more, according to this. It's like an active key that interacts with the physical world, maybe even unseen layers of reality. The moment you speak it correctly, the source claims its power is undeniable. It creates this palpable shift inside and out.
Fascinating, and maybe a little unnerving. Okay, so you've gone through the dark room, the sound testing, the fusing and twisting, and you found your personal word based on these intense breath-stopping signs. You have your unique key. What next? How do you actually use it to unlock the code?
Right, finding it is one thing, using it is another. And the source is exceptionally specific about the conditions needed for activation.
Okay.
It says very clearly, this word is not for casual, everyday use. The example it gives is pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
Not in line at Starbucks.
Haha. Right. Okay, so definitely not something you just drop into conversation. There's a specific state you need to be in, a required condition for it to work.
Exactly. The material describes this necessary state as the void between worlds.
The void between worlds.
It elaborates. It calls it that moment right between being fully awake and fully dreaming. That, elusive, wobbly, floaty, am I dead or dreaming moment.
Wow. The hypnagogic or hypnopompic state? That liminal threshold consciousness, where your rational mind is kind of offline and the subconscious is right there at the surface.
Precisely that state.
Why would that specific state be so crucial for activating this code, according to the source?
Well, that liminal state, across many different traditions, mystical and psychological, is often seen as a time of heightened receptivity. You're more open to subtle energies, intuition, altered perceptions, that kind of thing. So the source seems to suggest it's the perfect, maybe the only state where the word's vibration can properly interact with that ancient code inside you. It bypasses the usual conscious filters that might block or distort the connection. It's when you're most tuned in to receive that ancient call the word connects you to.
Okay, so you intentionally get yourself into this between worlds state, maybe as you're falling asleep or waking up. You have your word ready. How do you actually speak it then? Is there a specific way? Volume? Tone?
The source is very particular here too. It says, don't shout it, But also, don't just whisper it weakly. The instruction is simply to let it slide off your tongue.
Slide off your tongue. That phrasing suggests something natural, almost effortless, even though finding it took so much effort, like a release maybe.
Yes, exactly. A release, an unforced expression of the sound. And then, immediately after you let it slide off your tongue in that in-between state, there's a crucial follow-up instruction.
What is it?
Freeze. Stop everything. Just let the word echo inside you. Let it vibrate. And significantly, let it do things.
Let it do things. That's quite open-ended and intriguing. What kind of things does the source suggest you might experience or notice right after speaking the word in that state?
It gives a list of potential immediate responses. And they're pretty diverse and unusual.
Like what?
You might feel a distinct wave moving up or down your spine. You might see a strange, unexpected color flash in your mind's eye. You could suddenly experience a memory, vividly, that you are absolutely certain you have never lived.
A memory you never lived. Wow.
Or you might hear a soft voice speaking, a voice that isn't yours, but it doesn't feel scary. Or it says you might initially feel absolutely nothing at all.
Okay.
Followed moments later by a cascade of, well,
a wave in the spine, strange colors, unlived memories, a soft voice. Or nothing, then everything. That range is huge, and the experiences themselves are way outside the norm. What does that variety suggest about the word's immediate impact?
It suggests the word isn't just hitting one button, you know? It seems to interact with different layers of your being all at once, or maybe in quick succession. It engages the physical body, visual perception, memory, hearing, maybe even triggering things that feel like they come from outside your personal history.
Right.
And that nothing, then everything possibility.
Yeah.
That hints at a potentially really powerful, maybe overwhelming delayed reaction to.
Okay, so you speak the word, you let it echo, you observe whatever immediate strangeness happens. The source material then moves into a critical next phase, decode the response.
Yes, and it makes a really strong claim here. It asserts that something always responds. Every single time you use your word with real presence, something responds, even if it's subtle at first. And it emphasizes this response is real.
Something always responds, and it's real. Okay, so if these responses are happening and they're significant, how does the source say you should understand them? How do you decode them?
The absolute key instruction here is log everything. Pay close attention, write it all down. Don't dismiss anything, no matter how weird or fleeting it seems. It's all about creating a detailed record of the interaction.
Like keeping a dream journal, but specifically for tracking the effects of using your word.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
The source really stresses that these responses aren't just random blips. They're information, data, and it gives specific examples of the kinds of effects you should be watching for effects that might start spilling out of that liminal state and showing up in your regular waking life after you've used the word.
Okay. So not just the immediate feelings, but longer-term effects too. What kind of everyday effects are we talking about?
It lists several interesting ones.
Oh.
You might notice distinct, unusual changes in your dreams may be more vivid or symbolic or strange.
Okay.
Deja vu might start hitting you way more often or feel much stronger, more intense than usual. The source claims you might find that people in your life, even total strangers, start treating you differently, interacting with you in new ways, but without them consciously knowing why they're doing it.
People treat you differently without knowing why. That's fascinating.
Isn't it? And you might start getting random thoughts popping into your head that feel different. Almost planted is the word the source uses, like they didn't come from your own train of thought.
Changes in dreams, more deja vu, people reacting differently, thoughts feeling planted. These are effects that subtly, or maybe not so subtly, start tweaking your subjective reality and how you interact with the world. What's the source's take on why this happens? What do these phenomena mean?
According to the source, this is the proof. It's evidence that the underlying command, the code you activated with your word, is actively working its magic.
It's the command working.
Yes. But it describes the effect not as an instant light switch flipping on, but more like a slow burn.
A slow burn. Okay.
The implication is that once you activate the word, it kicks off this process that unfolds gradually. It subtly influences your reality, how you perceive things, how you interact over time.
So the impact isn't just in those few moments after you speak the word in that sleepy state. It starts there, but then it kind of permeates your waking life, subtly altering your perception, your interactions, even the seemingly random stuff around you.
That's what the source strongly suggests, yes. Your inner state starts shifting, and that shift begins to ripple outwards. manifesting in these weird synchronicities, altered perceptions, changes in how people react to you. It's all presented as evidence that the code is doing its work persistently behind the scenes.
This is where the material honestly gets even more intense and maybe a bit alarming, because the very next section hits you with this stark warning: you're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, it doesn't pull any punches there. It clarifies that this knowledge wasn't just, forgotten because people got busy or records got lost. It explicitly states this knowledge was buried.
Buried, actively hidden away.
Actively hidden. And it emphasizes there was a very deliberate reason why it was hidden.
Buried deliberately. Hidden by those ancient guardians you mentioned, the ones who took it to their graves. Where does the source say it was hidden if it was buried?
It claims this knowledge was cleverly encoded and hidden in plain sight, within things humans created.
Like what?
In architecture, in symbols, in music, woven into the very fabric of cultural artifacts almost, in a way that would preserve it maybe, but keep it inaccessible unless you knew exactly what you were looking for, unless you were somehow ready.
Hidden in buildings, symbols, songs. Like a subtle, energetic signature or symbolic code designed to be missed by most people. Why? Why would this apparently powerful knowledge, this code, be so fiercely guarded, so actively buried? What potential dangers did the Guardians see?
The source directly links digging this knowledge up, using the word, to the unlocking of doors.
Doors, okay. Metaphorical doors.
But then it immediately adds this crucial clarification, not metaphorical ones. Real internal reality-bending doors.
Real internal reality-bending doors. Wow. That phrase alone carries enormous weight, doesn't it?
It really does.
The implication seems to be that this isn't just about understanding yourself better. It holds the key to actually altering your fundamental inner structure in ways that could directly impact or reshape how you perceive and interact with reality itself.
And the very fact that this power was apparently so meticulously hidden, it strongly suggests that whatever lies behind those doors, or maybe just the process of opening them, was considered seriously dangerous, too disruptive, too profound for just anyone to access. The Guardians went to extraordinary lengths, which tells you the stakes must have been incredibly high in their view.
Right, so, okay, you found your word, you've used it in the right state, you're tracking these strange responses, these slow burn effects in your daily life, and you understand that doing this is potentially unlocking these internal reality-bending doors that maybe were meant to stay shut. What does the source say happens next if you keep going? After repeated use of the word, it calls this part the transformation.
Yeah, this section describes the deeper, more fundamental shifts that the source claims happen with consistent, intentional use of your word. It says these changes start inside, but eventually impact your external reality too.
Okay, and the source breaks this transformation down into phases again, right? The first one is called the inner shift. What changes does it describe happening inside you?
According to the material, after you've engaged with your word enough, your thoughts start to sharpen dramatically. You might even start predicting things just before they happen. Like your intuition just gets cranked up to 11.
Predicting things like actual precognition, an amplified ability to anticipate events. That's a massive cognitive shift.
It certainly suggests a major change in how your mind processes information. Maybe its relationship with time or cause and effect. The source also describes your body reacting differently, becoming more synced up with your mind. Remember the molecules reacting?
Yeah.
That seems to deepen, creating this new, much more integrated coherence between your mental state and your physical state.
Mind and body syncing up in a new, deeper way.
Okay, what other internal shifts does it talk about?
Old memories might come back, but the source says they look different now. Like they've been re-edited. That's the phrase it uses.
Re-edited memories. That's both fascinating and kind of deeply unsettling, isn't it? Not just remembering more details, but your actual past experiences feeling altered.
Yeah.
Like you're seeing them through a totally new lens because of this activated state.
It implies a fundamental rewrite of your personal history almost. How your past is stored, how it feels, how you perceive it. A shifting perspective so deep it feels like the memory itself changed.
Wow.
And maybe the most intriguing internal shift it mentions is hearing a voice.
Internal voice. Like the soft voice from the immediate response.
Possibly related. But it specifies this voice isn't spooky or sinister, it actually feels familiar. The source describes it poetically, like you're finally picking up a call that's been quietly ringing for you your entire life, since birth. A familiar voice. A call that's been waiting. That ties back beautifully to the ancient origins, the idea of an inherent code. It feels like this process leads to some kind of direct contact or communication with a deeper layer of yourself, or consciousness, something linked to this ancient knowledge.
It's definitely presented as a natural unfolding. The inner code finally finding its voice, making itself known to your conscious mind.
Okay, so you've got these profound inner changes. Sharper thoughts, mind-body sync, re-edited memories, this familiar inner voice. But the source says the changes don't stop there, they spill outward. It describes a phase called the outer distortion.
Right, this is where the source claims the changes inside. You start to actively impact the external world, causing reality itself to seemingly react or respond to your altered state.
Reality reacts. How does the source describe this external impact showing up?
It gives examples that sound a lot like, well, like heightened synchronicity, meaningful coincidences on steroids, maybe?
Like what?
People from your past might suddenly, out of the blue, text you or reappear in your life with no logical reason.
Okay. I start seeing repeating numbers everywhere. On clocks, signs, receipts, license plates, just popping up constantly with uncanny frequency.
Repeating numbers? Yeah, lots of people report that kind of thing.
And you might hear lyrics in songs, or random songs that feel intensely personal, like direct instructions or messages aimed specifically at you right in that moment.
People reappearing, repeating numbers, song lyrics feeling like instructions. It's like the outside world starts mirroring your internal state or actively engaging with your transformation in these weird, uncanny ways.
Exactly. And the source highlights something else. Random strangers, people who have no idea who you are. They might notice something's different about you.
Strangers notice?
Yeah. They might just comment simply, "You look different," even though they can't possibly say what's changed. This external, unsolicited validation is presented as a key sign that something real is happening.
Random strangers picking up on an internal change. That's powerful. What does the source suggest is the mechanism here? Why would reality seem to react to you? The source interprets all this as evidence that your energy field is changing. It claims your personal field of influence is mutating.
Energy field changing. Field of influence mutating.
Essentially, by activating this inner code, you've changed something fundamental about your presence, your vibration, your emanation, maybe. You've unlocked something inside. And as the source puts it, the world knows. Your altered inner state is creating ripples outwards, drawing attention, creating these synchronicities.
So activating this code doesn't just change how you see the world, it changes how the world and the people in it see you, how they interact with you. Your actual presence has a new kind of impact.
Precisely. You're not just different on the inside anymore. According to the source, your fundamental connection to reality and your influence upon it has been altered, leading to these noticeable external effects.
Okay, so you've journeyed through the whole thing. The premise, the search, the activation, decoding the responses, and now the transformation is taking hold, inside and out, bending perception, bending reality around you. This brings us to what the source material calls the choice.
And this is presented as a really critical moment, a genuine junction. The source basically says, if you've followed the steps, if you've gotten this far, you are now standing at a clear fork in the road.
A fork in the road. What are the two paths it presents?
Option one is pretty straightforward. You can choose to laugh it all off, dismiss all the weird experiences, forget your word if you even can at that point, and just try to go back to your old life, pretend none of this ever happened.
The path of disengagement. Return to normal. Pretend the forbidden dive never happened.
Exactly. That's option one.
And what's option two?
Option two is to consciously choose to keep going. Keep speaking your word. And the source adds a really important condition here. You keep speaking it, even when you're scared, even when the world starts bending in ways that feel wrong but weirdly right.
Keep going. Lean into the strangeness, even if it's frightening or disorienting, despite the reality distortions and the inner shifts. Okay, what does the source say is the ultimate outcome? The irreversible consequence if you choose path number two, if you fully commit to unlocking and using your word.
The source states it with chilling finality. Once you fully unlock that word, it doesn't just change parts of you, it fundamentally rewrites your story.
Rewrites your story, wow.
Yeah.
That's a claim of ultimate magnitude and permanence.
Absolutely.
It suggests a transformation so total that your past, your present, your future path, your very identity, your life's narrative arc, it's all fundamentally reshaped by fully activating this code. It's way beyond personal growth. It sounds like a complete alteration of your perceived existence.
It implies an irreversible, all-encompassing transformation, fundamental shift in who you are and the reality you inhabit. the point of no return.
And leading right out of that huge choice, the source finishes with what it calls a final warning.
Yes. And this warning is delivered with absolute seriousness.
Yeah.
It strips away any last bit of feeling that this might be just theoretical or symbolic. The source emphasizes this is not a TikTok trend. This is for real.
Okay. Reinforcing that everything described is meant to be taken literally, at least within the framework the source is presenting. What's the core message of this final warning?
It hammers home the point.
Yeah.
If you manage to find your true word, your personal key, and you use it with presence, meaning with real intention and focus,
Yeah.
it will break something open inside you. Guaranteed.
Break something fundamental open deep inside your core.
Yes. And it lists the potential outcomes of this breaking open, acknowledging they could be varied, intense. It might hurt you.
Hurt you.
It might heal you. Or it might just leave you with this profound, maybe disorienting feeling that you've basically been asleep for decades and you're only just now truly waking up.
Hurt, heal, waking up from decades of sleep. That's a huge spectrum of possible experiences. All of them sound intense and life-altering.
Definitely. But maybe the most significant part of this final warning, the bit that really underlines the weight of that choice you were just presented with, is this statement about irreversibility. The source states with absolute clarity, you won't ever be able to unfeel it.
You won't ever be able to unfeel it.
Yeah.
So once the something is broken open, once the transformation starts, once you've felt the effects, it becomes a permanent part of who you are. There's no going back to how you were before you started this forbidden dive.
It really highlights the profound and lasting impact the source claims this process has. The internal shift is presented as absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
And irreversible.
And the source material actually ends by turning that potent question right back onto the listener, right back onto you. After laying out this entire forbidden path, the code, the search, the effects, the warnings, the choice, it just asks point blank, are you ready to speak your word? Or will you just pretend you never saw this?
It's a direct challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source even suggests that just by engaging with this material, just by hearing about it, something inside you might already be stirred. It finishes by saying something like, something in you is already awake, and it wants to finish what we just started.
Whoa.
It really positions you, the listener, not as just passively taking in information, but as someone who's now implicitly involved, someone facing a choice, whether you actively sought this out or not.
That is, yeah. That's a powerful, definitely unsettling, and ultimately incredibly challenging way to conclude the material. It doesn't just present an idea, it feels designed to provoke a reaction, to force you to consider that choice.
It absolutely elevates it beyond just an interesting read. It feels like it demands some kind of response, even if that response is a conscious decision to just walk away and ignore it.
So we've taken this pretty intense deep dive into the source material describing this forgotten inner code. We've looked at the premise, this real vibrating code buried inside you, its ancient hidden origins, the dramatic claims about its power to transform.
We follow the steps described for the search, that sound testing in the dark silence, the intuitive fuse and twist phase, those intense validation cues like your breath stopping.
We looked at how the source says to activate the word only in that specific liminal state between waking and sleeping, and the really diverse, strange, immediate responses it describes, plus the need to decode the longer-term effects through careful observation.
Yeah, and we've definitely covered the stark warning that this knowledge was deliberately buried for a reason, and that using it unlocks real, internal, reality-bending doors.
And we explored those claimed transformations, inner and outer, that supposedly happen with repeated use-sharpened thoughts, re-edited memories, that familiar inner voice, and then the outer world seemingly reacting with synchronicities, people noticing you're different.
And finally, we hit that critical choice this source presents. Retreat back to normal, or keep going even when it feels wrong but weirdly right, knowing the claimed consequence is that it will fundamentally rewrite your story.
It really leaves you with a lot to think about, doesn't it? I mean, if this code, as the source describes it, actually exists, and if it really was so carefully buried by ancient guardians, what could its full unleashed potential truly be?
And maybe even more pointedly, what was it about that power or the consequences of using it that made those guardians so determined to hide it for so long? Why weave it into buildings and music instead of just sharing it?
Those are definitely the questions that linger long after you engage with material like this. It offers this tantalizing, maybe dangerous glimpse into a hidden possibility about what we are and the layers of reality we might not normally see.
A truly deep dive into the potential, and the peril described in the source.
Well, thank you for joining us on this exploration, this deep dive into the concept of unlocking a forgotten inner code as presented by the source material we looked at today.